Hi everyone, my name is Valerie Sabol and I will be recording a position statement called The Global Justice Movement is a Valid Alternative to Capitalism. This is for Dr. Bratton's Business Administration 605 class. So in order to explain why the global justice movement is a valid alternative to capitalism, I need to spend a few minutes talking about why capitalism is no longer a valid system. Really, capitalism presents itself as an engine of innovation and economic development, and it is aggressively promoted as benefiting all, when in fact it really has a little benefit on the mass majority and may be seen as some as predatory. So when we think about a capitalistic or hegemonic system, this is really, in Marxist philosophy, a culture where the dominant ruling class manipulate that culture and in that society. So the beliefs, the explanations, the perceptions and values are so imposed by the ruling class and their worldview that it's accepted as the cultural norm. So this really is the mentality of capitalism as it stands today. And while this has led to economic growth and world trade and corporate profit, it really has also led to destruction of our environment and exploitation of developing countries. So really, capitalism is something that isn't sustainable, and it really just isn't working for the mass majority. The problems with capitalism, if we look at the Grundrisse, a series of economic writings by Karl Marx, it's been theorized that capital cannot abide a limit. So when we look at capitalism and the actual process of capital accumulation, capital is used to buy power, labor, and means of production in order to produce or create a commodity. One sells a commodity for original money and also a profit. One reinvests that money for business expansion. But really, how do you invest at the right time, at the right place, in the right volume? It really requires financial ingenuity and innovation. And so this really has empowered the financiers. So excessive power of capital and of the financiers has really caused a system imbalance. And since the 1970s, organized labor has been disempowered, and there's been global outsourcing of labor, and there's been labor-saving technologies, which has heightened competition, and it's lowered and continues to lower manufacturing profits, while at the same time, labor wages have remained relatively stagnant. So roughly translated, there are class inequities that continue to increase, the rich keep getting richer, and the wealth is hoarded. Some other dangers of capitalism, I'll just list a few here, the 17 contradictions in Harvey's book. Really, one of the most important ones that I'll present is the dangers to the environment. So capitalism is very dangerous, it's destructive, and we have problems associated now with capitalism that includes air pollution, toxic landfills, tainted and toxic drinking water, rivers and oceans, and global warming. And really, pollution is not an inevitable byproduct of capitalism because there are methods that do exist and can be developed to neutralize and recycle and contain industrial waste. But really, under capitalism, the majority of the people, the masses, have no power to make these kinds of decisions. So really, how dangerous is capitalism? Well, here we have a picture depicting an ego system with man on top, and then as opposed to the ecosystem. And I would challenge my listeners to think about this. We can all recognize these corporate name brands very easily, but can we name these plants as easily? So the global justice movement really is our alternative because capitalism is a system that works for affluent entrepreneurs. They make hefty profits, but it really is a system that no one else benefits from. Really, since the 1990s, the global justice movement became the center for another world is possible. So global justice, defined by Della Porta in 2007, said really the global justice movement is a network of organizations engaging in collective action of various kinds on the basis of a shared goal of advancing the cause of justice, whether that be economic, social, political, or environmental. And it's really among and between peoples across the globe. So what has spurred the global justice movement? It's really the critics of corporations. They have too much power. Free markets do not force them to serve the public interest. Governments cannot control them. They have inordinate legal rights. They seek to make money, so they are inherently immoral because they seek market expansion, sales growth, short-term financial gain, and regulatory lenience. They value nature only as a production resource. They value workers only as costs and human needs only as a demand. They really escape accountability for their actions. And really, the neoliberalism ideology has freed markets and corporations to such an extent that they lack oversight and regulation, which can be very problematic. So with the global justice movement, it's really been also called the movement of movements. And we first saw this in 1999 in Seattle, where there was over 50,000 activists that gathered to protest at the World Trade Organization meeting. There was high visibility. We also saw this in Genoa, Italy, where there was 100,000 activists gathered to protest the Group of 8, which is now the Group of 20, which are really the wealthiest nations that gathered together to discuss the global economy. Again, benefiting them and their interests, and not necessarily that of the masses. And you'll see in this picture that the masses really are the 99%. So global activism is important. And how can we be active? And that is, global activism can work towards the benefit of the environment and the individual by boycotts against corporate organizations. There can be harassment campaigns and ridicule and shaming. And this is a picture from the Hall of Shame, where corporations were shamed for their human rights violations, environmental destruction, and immoral tax practices and corruption. And really, the global activists, really it's almost a David and Goliath situation, or because I have small children, it could be the Hulk versus Spider-Man. Spider-Man is able to fight. He has to be very clever and in his tactics, because he or she doesn't necessarily have the financial backing as does financial corporations. But we can see that we can create pressure for change, and really corporations often make changes because they want to avoid bad press. So really, when we think about the masses, 99% is really too big to fail. So the key source of strength in the global justice movement is the willingness of the public to see environmental, religious, and human rights groups as selfless, acting, and for justice. So really, capitalism is no longer working, and really, it's a system that's about to crash. And so what's the alternative? It is the global justice movement. Thank you for listening.